Hey guys, Hacker Tech here for another video, and today we're going to be doing an interesting one because we're going to be doing a comparison of the OnePlus 13 and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Now I want to start off by saying that this video is all based off my opinion, and this is coming from someone who is an S23 Ultra user. So there's going to be some opinions here that may not reflect for everyone, and I also want to just kind of give my upfront experience, what I have been able to test, how I've been doing it. So I purchased the OnePlus 13 first, coming from the Galaxy S23 Ultra. Now I did return that, and I posted a video on why I returned the OnePlus 13, and I currently have the Galaxy S25 Ultra. I'm testing that. I've had it for about a week. I had a little bit over a week, I would say. The OnePlus 13 I had for just under 2 weeks. So that's where I'm at with testing. By the end of this video, I'll also give you my opinion from an S23 Ultra user's perspective, whether or not either of these devices are good options to even upgrade to. Again, my personal opinions, but just want to kind of make this video to go over things that are not commonly covered in other comparisons. These are all the things for me that were influencing factors on which device I would or would not go with and why I would or would not upgrade. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and talk about all these different points, and I'll go through a few things that I captured that are very specific to my experience, but I definitely want to hear from everyone in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. So guys, starting off here with performance, let me go ahead and just give my experience there. I'm comparing these side by side, so I'm going to tell you which of the devices did better in these particular areas and why. But again, some of these, my reason is going to be a little bit different than what others might feel. So for performance, for example, this one is a little bit less controversial, I'll say, because performance-wise, the OnePlus 13, in pretty much every regard, is going to do better. It's better in performance because simply it has more RAM. It's better in performance because the operating system feels and performs more smoothly, and it's better in performance from a benchmark perspective. There's a number of different reasons. Now, Samsung has really good optimization. The one thing I'll say for the Galaxy devices is that for a device that has 12 gigs of RAM versus 16, it does use overall less RAM on a daily basis than the OnePlus 13 does. So optimization-wise, the Galaxy S25 Ultra does perform very well. But the issue is that the OnePlus 13, having more RAM, and just generally in terms of the operating system itself, feels more smooth. And this is true in everyday operation when I was browsing through web pages, scrolling through things. Some other reviewers highlighted this as well, where just generally using the device feels faster in almost everything I did on the OnePlus 13. So while I did post my reasons for why I returned the device, immediately after getting the S25 Ultra, I could tell that there was just a difference in performance. Now, a thing I just wanted to mention here is that I transferred my data and all of my settings to the OnePlus 13 and the Galaxy S25 Ultra, so my experience on both devices was after that data transfer. Now, some interesting things I noticed when I did the transfer of data from my S23 Ultra to the Galaxy S25 Ultra, there were some bugs I was having on the S23 Ultra that actually carried over. My YouTube app, for example, consistently crashes on the S23 Ultra. Don't know why. It's just something that whenever I click on a link in my chat, or if I go into my web browser and search for a YouTube video and I tap on that YouTube video, if I tap on it, it will momentarily open the video in YouTube, then the video will crash and it'll go back to the YouTube home screen. So I have not figured out a way to fix that in the YouTube app. However, I downloaded YouTube Revanced, and that's been my only way to work around it, to actually use YouTube without having massive issues on both my Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, and the same is true now on my S25 Ultra. It's still having an issue, which means it's more than likely some kind of a software issue that transferred. What was interesting is on the OnePlus 13, transferring all the data, transferring all my YouTube data. Clearly, it's not the same thing there because YouTube had no issues on that device. So just an interesting thing to notice. There were some bugs and quirks that transferred on the S25 Ultra from the 23 Ultra that did not for the OnePlus 13. But I'll talk about some of the issues that I had with the OnePlus 13 as well later on. Now for camera, I have this listed as an even win for both devices. Now that's not necessarily true on all regards. I'm going to talk about why each one has an area that it does better. What I mean by that is we kind of have to break down video and taking pictures. So I can give a flat out win for each of the devices in the specific areas. If we're talking about just taking pictures, me personally, and I'll show some examples, snapping quick pictures on the OnePlus 13 wins. For me, hands down. Why? For me, there's a really important reason that I think that's very important that the OnePlus 13 wins with photos, and that's because I personally take a lot of pictures of moving objects. I have a 7-year-old, and I also have cats, and whenever I'm trying to get pictures of them, it's virtually impossible to get good pictures on Galaxy devices. Now, there were some videos that other YouTubers did where they talked about the experience on the S25 Ultra versus older devices like the 24, the 23 Ultra. I can say that from the 23 Ultra, the S25 Ultra has improved very, very slightly, not in a significant way. So if you're trying to get pictures of moving objects, a pet that's moving around, or your toddler, do not get the Galaxy device and expect that it's going to perform well in those situations. It will not. If it's a still object, you can definitely get really decent quality pictures. But for me, whenever I was taking pictures, I always preferred the pictures on the OnePlus 13, which is actually surprising because a lot of people tend to favor the Galaxy devices. For just pictures, I personally would always go with the OnePlus 13. The only negative with the OnePlus 13, and again, I'm not going to do a full-fledged camera comparison, so if you'd like to see that, plenty of YouTubers have done side-by-side comparisons. The only negative I would say with the OnePlus 13 is that, it does struggle a little bit in low light, but I also found the same was true with the Galaxy devices, where I think that the biggest kind of negative with the OnePlus devices is in the color accuracy. I would say there are definitely noticeable situations where the color was not identical to what I saw in real life. But I actually found that, and again, this is just my personal opinion and my personal take, the way the OnePlus 13 modifies the image and the color, like kind of hues and tones that it adds, I never had a negative view of it. I think that the final images that were produced are much better looking images. They may not be as natural, so if you're trying to get something more natural, obviously something like a Pixel is the best bet. Or maybe the Samsung is going to produce more natural images sometimes. But if you want something that just overall looks better, subjectively, for me, the OnePlus 13 did better every time. But again, on camera and on the subject of camera, the other aspect is video. And this is where I think the OnePlus 13 really struggles, because the OnePlus 13, if you're just shooting a video that's not moving, if you have your camera stationary and you're maybe recording an object or a scene that's right in front of you, for me, it performs fine, and I thought it was pretty comparable to the Galaxy S25 Ultra. However, if you need to pan to the left or right, not necessarily walking forward because stabilization is good, but if you're looking to the left or right and you're trying to capture with video a scene around you, the OnePlus 13 does have, I don't know if it would be considered a bug or if it's just the way the camera functions, but moving left and right with the camera, even slowly, there's definitely stuttering and it's a bit jittery, it's a bit shaky. So for me, I did not like the way the video footage would look if I would pan the camera to the left slowly or to the right. It always felt like there were some frame drops or there was some kind of stuttering. And I saw people actually ask that question, whether that was resolved. And I don't believe it's been resolved just yet. It's something that seems to be true on previous OnePlus devices. It's still true. So for that aspect, I don't have those issues on the Galaxy S23 Ultra or the 25 Ultra. Video is consistently very good. Video is where I think the Galaxy S23 or 25 Ultra, again, if you were sticking with that device, the S23 Ultra or 24 or 25, all the Galaxy devices for me perform consistently better in video versus OnePlus. Okay, so the next one, AI. I gave AI to the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and the reason being, there's a number of issues that I noticed with the AI functions of the OnePlus devices. One thing is that AI is not done locally on the device with OnePlus devices, so that's something to take into consideration. It means that AI functions, whether you're removing an object or whatever you might be doing, it's just going to simply take a lot longer on the OnePlus devices generally. I also posted a video with a bug that I noticed on the OnePlus devices, where when you're trying to use the AI features, the bug actually caused some of the features to fail. So I had to change my location in some cases. Just generally the AI features, some of them worked okay. I was able to get workarounds to get those different AI tools to function on the OnePlus devices. But overall, I felt the AI capabilities on the Galaxy devices worked better. They failed less often. For example, with things like the object remover, it removed shadows better than on the OnePlus devices. So if AI is the thing that you're most interested in, Galaxy devices, I think, have the edge there. For me personally, I'll be honest, the AI functions on either device did not matter to me that much because, quite honestly, there are so many AI tools that I can download for free to do most of those things. And quite honestly, again, this is just my opinion. When I was looking at things like being able to help me generate text for a message or for an email on the Galaxy devices, those are things that are marketed. First of all, the ones on the S25 Ultra are not even in the most part new to the S25 Ultra. Like the S25 or S24 Ultra had many of those features already. The few features that S25 Ultra did adopt, there were relatively few of them. And again, the ones that were new were not things that I couldn't just do with a free AI tool or an inexpensive AI tool. Anyways, I didn't really find that they were something that would differentiate the device enough that would make me go with the Galaxy S25 Ultra over the OnePlus 13. Screen is another area that I think is an interesting comparison point because we have two very different experiences. On the screen of the S25 Ultra, you're getting the bigger screen, and you're getting a flat screen. And on the OnePlus 13, you get a smaller screen, but it has subtle, slight curves on the sides of the screen. It's not quite as wide. The sides are more rounded versus the flat sides that you have on the S25 Ultra. Now, again, on the S25 Ultra versus previous devices, like in my case, the S23 Ultra, they made the corners more rounded as opposed to the really sharp corners of the previous Ultra devices. So that was an improvement in that regard, but the flat sides is something that's super subjective. Some people may like it, some people may not. I personally am not a huge fan of the flat feeling sides. I think that a combination of the rounded corners with rounded sides is better, which basically is what the OnePlus device has. I actually really like the design of the OnePlus 13. I think that it's honestly the probably perfect combination because I like the very subtle curvature of the screen itself. You know, it's not a flat screen like the S25 Ultra is, but it's not curved too much. The corners are rounded off, and it's got just a very balanced design, which I really like. So that's very subjective. You do get a bigger screen with the S25 Ultra. But another thing that you can compare is, the displays themselves. You get Dolby Vision on I believe it was the OnePlus 13 that had Dolby Vision. But one of the more important things is that with the S25 Ultra, you're getting an 8-bit versus the 10-bit display on the OnePlus 13. So really, there's only one thing that the Galaxy S25 Ultra is going to win on with the screen. Well, I'll say there's two things that it wins with. It has the bigger screen, and it has better glare reduction. So if you're looking for something that's going to reduce glare, I will give some credit to the screen on the S25 Ultra for really significantly reducing the reflections and the glare. But in terms of which is the better overall display, again, it's very subjective, so I can't give a win to either one. But the OnePlus 13 does have the higher bit rate for the screen. And it also has Dolby Vision, which the Galaxy S25 Ultra I do not believe has. So that's something that is in favor of the OnePlus 13. But again, very different screen experiences. Now, before I look at some of the pictures that I took of my cats, which I'm going to kind of show that for comparison of the cameras, the next thing I wanted to talk about was storage. Storage is something I don't see a lot of people talk about. And this is really important because in the US, you can only get the OnePlus 13 in a 512 gigabyte variant. I'll be honest and say that was one of the reasons that I returned the device as well, because I'm starting to run out of storage. I do have technically enough left, but I'm starting to run out of storage on my Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. So if you want more storage, you can get a 1 terabyte version here in the US for the Galaxy S25 Ultra, which you can't for the OnePlus 13. Now, outside of the US, you can get a version of the OnePlus 13 that has 24 gigs of RAM, and I believe that has a terabyte of storage as well, so you can get to it depending on if you're willing to get a version outside of the US. If you're in the US, for example, but that's very region specific. For the Galaxy S25 Ultra devices, depending on your region, I believe every region, for the most part, should be able to get that 1 terabyte version. So Samsung has the advantage there if storage is important, or if you're low on storage and 512 is not enough for you, then it kind of limits your options. You can't really go with the OnePlus 13. And for me, I was considering making that sacrifice because I could just kind of remove some videos and things like that to try and free up storage, which is what I'm still dealing with on the S23 Ultra, should I keep it. But it's not convenient. Much rather have the 1 terabyte version. Now for battery, another super easy one for the win here for the OnePlus 13, because the battery life is just so much better. It does have a 6,000 milliamp hour battery versus 5,000. And while the S25 Ultra does a very good job with the milliamp hour battery it has being 1,000 less, it does not stack up. Like, it's not a huge difference as much as you'd think in terms of screen on time for the S25 Ultra, but it definitely does make a noticeable difference. The OnePlus 13 was lasting me noticeably longer than the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and you can go and you can watch those kind of comparison tests by other YouTubers who have done comparisons between all the devices and how much longer, whether it's an hour or something like that of extra screen on time. It's still a difference, and the OnePlus 13 generally always wins. Okay, audio and Bluetooth. This is an interesting one because for me, I noticed that there were some significant differences in the audio and Bluetooth experience on the devices. So most notably, the reason that I gave this to the S25 Ultra is because on the OnePlus 13, I had a number of issues. Now, I will say that there are some things to notice on the S25 Ultra as well, but generally the experience was better on the S25 Ultra. First of all, the bass, general sound quality on all of my Samsung devices. The S23 Ultra even is also better sound experience, for me at least, in testing than with the OnePlus 13. I think it may have to do with the codecs that are supported, or that could be part of it. I tried cycling through codecs and making setting changes to try and get the sound quality to match, and I couldn't. But again, this is something that I saw people reporting on community forums, so it wasn't just my experience. The sound quality just is audibly and noticeably less positive than on the Galaxy devices. So if you want something that is going to give you the best experience with your Bluetooth devices, or in general, the Galaxy devices perform better. But then also, I had mentioned in one of my other videos where I talked about the OnePlus 13 and the issues I had, that there was a specific bug that was actually one of the biggest deciders of why I sent it back. And that was because when I plug in any kind of wired device, I plugged in wired headphones that have a microphone, I plugged in just a microphone. In all cases, when I was trying to record with my microphone, in apps that are leveraging the microphone, for example, one of the apps where I record music and things like that, my audio, my speaking audio or my singing audio in that case, there was a delay. So there's a very noticeable mic audio delay. And in fact, when I was recording with the video on the camera, I even noticed that what was happening is you could see my mouth movements as I was recording were not in sync with my actual speaking voice. But once the video was captured, I noticed that it was in sync. So I think that possibly on the OnePlus software, it is actually syncing it up after that content is saved, like from the video. But this creates an issue when you're using an app that leverages the microphone, and if it's real time, the audio just simply doesn't line up. I don't know why there's that delay. I could not figure out a solution for it. And again, I've seen other people report it. So that's really an important thing to know if you're using recording devices and you have an issue with syncing it up. You know, if you can obviously always go back, and if you're editing a video, you can reline up audio and things like that if you have issues. But when you're using things like a music app and you're trying to record audio, that can be a really big problem. And for me, it was. The next thing I want to talk about is notifications. Notifications experience was noticeably better on the Galaxy devices. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, the color coding, or just like the colorization of notifications on the Galaxy devices, makes it easier to differentiate notifications versus on the OnePlus device. Everything is kind of a consistent white or single tone color. And I think that's intentional to make things look a little bit more clean. So I can see why they did it that way, but I see a lot of people online complaining about it. I don't personally like the way the notifications are laid out on the OnePlus devices on Oxygen OS. And in addition to there being no color differentiation the way that they do it on One UI, the other issue I had is that by default, the notifications are showing a lot of content in the notification panel when you swipe down, which means that you have to scroll a lot more through your notifications. Everything's kind of condensed by default on One UI, and I couldn't figure out a way around that. So just generally, the experience with notifications was better on the Galaxy devices. But more importantly, there are known issues, and I experienced some of them, albeit not as bad. But there are known issues with notifications, especially on the lock screen, either not appearing or less consistently appearing. And I definitely noticed occasions where notifications were less consistent on the OnePlus devices, which even though, you know, many of the different apps I was using, I was getting notifications, the experience was less consistent, which made me feel less confident that I'd be able to always rely on it to get my notifications versus the Galaxy devices. I've never had notification issues, at least like general notification issues. However, I will give one caveat and say with full transparency that on my Galaxy device right now, on the S25 Ultra, I am dealing with a weird situation kind of similar to the OnePlus, where for some reason I'm not actually seeing any notifications on my initial lock screen, but the experience with notifications once I've unlocked the device has been more, I would say, consistent. But that, I only had the device for about a week or so, so I'm trying to see if that is something others are dealing with, and I don't really know at this point, but I'm going to kind of table that for now because I don't know if that's just me or not. Okay, Android Auto, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but I just wanted to mention it. So again, Android Auto experience is better for me on the Galaxy devices just because of the bug that I had with my particular device, my OnePlus 13 versus the Galaxy device, both the S23 Ultra and the 25 Ultra. Now, the reason is because when I plugged in my OnePlus 13, immediately I had an issue where it was not being recognized. And so I actually had to go in and enable developer settings in order to get Android Auto to work on the OnePlus 13. Others online reported similar issues. With the Galaxy devices, I've never had an issue with Android Auto out of the box. It's always worked. Sometimes there could be latency and things like that, but I've never had an issue where it just simply didn't work. Once I fixed the issue on the OnePlus 13, it seemed to work pretty well. I didn't have any issues after that, outside of just, again, the audio quality, which is more of a Bluetooth problem, being an issue. But the fact that I had to enable developer settings and enable USB debugging to get Android Auto to work was inconvenient, and so that's something to note. Pricing. This is also another area that's super interesting, and it's not straightforward because at list price, clearly the Galaxy S25 Ultra is significantly more expensive than the OnePlus 13. But you really have to take into consideration the final price that you're going to pay, especially if you have a trade-in. And this is going to vary a lot by region. So for me, with the OnePlus 13, I actually was able to get a trade-in value for my S23 Ultra of around $450, if I remember correctly. So after everything, while the list price was $899, for my variant, it was down from $999 for the 512 gigabyte version. When I did the trade-in, it brought the price of the OnePlus 13 down to, I believe it was around $450. And so what my monthly payment became with what I had available for financing here in the US was about $75, I think it was. And that was without the trade-in discount reflected at the time of purchase. So I had to finance for $75 a month, and I believe that was for a year. So the final total came out to $450-ish roughly. And then, of course, once I would have, if I had kept the device, sent the device in, then they would have subtracted the respective amount from that. And I think it would have come out closer to like maybe $30 a month or something like that after I sent in my device. Now, Samsung is different. Again, I want to just kind of give the structure so you understand the differences. The way it worked for Samsung, list price much higher, around somewhere between $1,300 and $1,600. I can't remember the exact price, but you can, of course, go on to Samsung's website and look at their pricing. So it's significantly more expensive off the bat. I want to say when I looked at it, the list price was $1,499. So while it's more expensive initially, the trade-in value that I got for my S23 Ultra was around $750. So that meant that my final price was $669, which is roughly it's $200 and something dollars, close to $300 difference in price, I believe. $200 to $300 difference. Not as big of a difference once you consider the trade-in being much higher value for the S25 Ultra in this case, trading in the S23 Ultra. So it's something to consider. And also what the actual monthly price was, because with the Samsung financing plan, they did a 2-year plan. So my monthly payment came out to about $23 a month, much lower. And also just keep in mind that Samsung gives you in financing the value after the trade-in already. So basically all you have to do is make sure you send the device in. You're already guaranteed that trade-in value. With OnePlus 13, you have to send the device in, they have to inspect it, and then they may give you that value that they initially quote you at, but if they see anything wrong with it, of course, they will change that. So you're not being guaranteed that price upfront the same way that you are with Samsung. And again, because the financing range is a longer period of time, the monthly payment is actually less, almost half the price, at least off the bat, with the Samsung device versus the OnePlus device. So it's just a lot of things to take into consideration. I wanted you guys to understand what you can expect fully with those different pricing models when you're buying these devices. Okay, and screenshots, super minor thing, just wanted to mention it. For me, I actually found a lot of value in the way that OnePlus 13, and I actually have this mixed up. I apologize. I meant to give screenshots to the OnePlus 13, so just flip those. The reason I gave that to the OnePlus 13 for screenshots is because they have a scrolling capture capability that is significantly better than the approach that Samsung has. So what I mean is, on the OnePlus 13, you can go to a long web page or maybe a chat history, and you can click on, you can do your command, whether you're doing like the swipe action or if you're pressing the volume and the power buttons to perform a screenshot. When you do that, if you do a scrolling capture on the OnePlus 13, you just tap on scrolling capture, and it'll automatically scroll as far down as you need it to. It just keeps scrolling automatically until it gets to the end of the page. So it's super easy. It's a bit more inconvenient with the Galaxy devices. You have to click on, you perform a screenshot function, then you tap, and it'll scroll down. Then you tap again, and it'll scroll down a little bit more. Tap again, you keep doing that. So not a big deal for a relatively long or a relatively short, maybe message or web page. But I actually had a situation where I was trying to capture the message history from a conversation that was super long. And it took me like 5 times as much time to do that scroll and capture on the Samsung device versus the OnePlus 13. So something to consider. I really doubt that would be something that would influence which device you'd go with, but it's just to kind of show that there's little pieces of the software experience that can affect your day-to-day usability. Okay, durability. I give this to the OnePlus 13 in part because of the waterproofing. So I have those separated, but they kind of go hand in hand. But just generally, the OnePlus 13 feels like the more rugged device, and it has a lot of features and functions that just make it, overall the better device you'd probably want to take with you if you were, for example, maybe going on a hike or doing something outdoors. Just the waterproofing alone makes it more durable, but we've seen people put this thing, the OnePlus 13, into washing machines and things like that. It's a really durable device. I think there's been less testing that I've seen for the Galaxy S25 Ultra, so I'm sure, that it's a very durable device. But I think that the combination of things that they've done with the OnePlus 13, having that, custom ceramic guard capability on the screen versus the Gorilla Glass approach on Galaxy S25 Ultra, it's just a different approach. That's something, it's a little bit more subjective, but if for nothing else, the waterproofing alone is a huge thing that's going to make it more durable when you're out in, an environment where you might drop it somewhere that there could be moisture and things like that. So again, I kind of tie durability to waterproofing in this case. They are separate things. Hard to say which one is 100% more durable, but that's just kind of like my perspective, right? The second thing here that I wanted to talk about was Gcam. Now, this is also something that is not going to be relevant for everyone, but I figured I would just go ahead and at least mention it, which is that on neither of these devices can you get Gcam, and if you're not happy with the color science that are available through the native apps, for me on the S23 Ultra, one of the things that I really like is that I was able to download and set up Gcam to take pictures with, it basically gives a completely different color science to the images that I capture. And I really like the approach that Pixel software takes to pictures. And I have that set up and working on my S23 Ultra. I couldn't get it to work on the OnePlus 13 or the S25 Ultra, but why I'm mentioning is because if you're trying to upgrade to one of these devices, eventually they'll probably both have that capability. Definitely the S25 Ultra, I'm sure, will probably have it because at some point all the Galaxy devices have had the ability to get Gcam, and I'm not sure with OnePlus 13. I think the same would be true because OnePlus 12, I've seen people get Gcam working. But if you were trying to upgrade immediately and you didn't like the way the pictures look, for people that use Gcam like myself, it's a really huge plus to be able to have that. And quite honestly, that's something that makes me want to stay with my S23 Ultra simply because I have Gcam set up and working and I can't get it to work on these other devices. Charging, super easy. Charging is so much faster on the OnePlus 13. There was a period where I actually had my S23 Ultra at the time and the OnePlus 13 were both at about like 30%. And I plugged in my OnePlus 13 to, the standard charger that came with the device, 80 watts. And then I plugged in with the Samsung charger, my Galaxy S23 Ultra. Now, again, I know the S23 Ultra is going to charge a little bit slower than the S25 Ultra. They're relatively similar, but it's a little bit slower. But I actually got from like 30% to 100% on the OnePlus 13. And in that time period, I had just gotten to around like 55% on the S23 Ultra. So that's crazy, guys. Like 20% increase in the same amount of time. Like, whatever that was, 70-ish%, trying to do the math in my head here, increase on the OnePlus 13, where 20% happened on the S23 Ultra. So I'm just saying that in my experience, the charging speeds are like mind-blowing on the OnePlus 13. For me personally, because I'm always charging my device, especially when I'm working, I don't find that having that charging speed is something that is make or break. So I can still use my S23 Ultra and be happy enough with it because I'm always able to have it charged when I need to. But if I needed to go periods of times where, I only had a small window to charge my device, for example, if there were situations where, that charging speed was going to make more of a difference, obviously the OnePlus 13 is going to be the better option if you don't have large windows of time to charge your device. Okay, and then some other things here. One-handed usability, again, for my particular experience, the one-handed usability of the OnePlus 13 is just better. It was much easier for me to type one-handed on the OnePlus 13. It was much easier for me to hold and comfortably use while browsing websites with the OnePlus 13. And because it's a 6.8-inch screen versus the 6.9-inch screen, just pulling my finger across the screen on the Galaxy S25 Ultra isn't always comfortable. On the OnePlus 13, definitely easier to use one-handed. But that being said, I'll talk about some of the comfort things between the two, where one or the other is going to win here in just a second. But in terms of design, it's a bit of a mixed bag because I think they both have some things that are pros and cons. I think that overall, especially with the variant that I had the black version of the OnePlus 13 that I got that has that glass back. I love the way it looks. I love the feel in the hand of the OnePlus 13. Generally, just holding it. Definitely preferred it over the Galaxy S25 Ultra. I think the metal rails feel rough in the hand without a case. Once you put a case on these devices, it doesn't matter as much. But just feeling the raw device, I definitely preferred the way the OnePlus 13 felt. I just overall think that I have probably a bias for the way that kind of nice, smooth glass felt, but also the aesthetics of that kind of feel of the OnePlus device. It was really, really nice. So I definitely preferred that. But the one negative thing design-wise is the camera bump on the OnePlus 13, and that kind of comes into the gaming comfort. So when you're turning your device in landscape mode and you use it for gaming, what I found is that it is just not very comfortable to hold the OnePlus 13 and game because unless you have a case that is sort of removing that gap between the camera bump and the back of the device. In my case, the one that came with it, which was the sandstone case, there was still that gap. So when I would put my hand over the back of the device when I was gaming, my fingers were just completely smudging the camera, and there was like no way for me to really hold it in a comfortable way where I wasn't just being obscured by the camera bump. But on the Galaxy devices, because of the way the cameras are laid out, even though arguably the cameras were better on the S24 Ultra or the S23 Ultra, because they don't have that gap under those little pieces. Even with that being the case, it's more of a flat experience when you have a case on it. So I definitely was able to more comfortably game on either of my Galaxy devices versus the OnePlus 13. But the general comfort I give to the OnePlus 13 simply because outside of gaming, it's lighter. It's easier for one-handed usage, and one-handed usage, which you're not using it in landscape mode, that's where I feel like it's more comfortable to use. I think in landscape mode, and also maybe if you're watching videos for a long period of time, you're probably going to have a better experience with the Samsung device. But being that the OnePlus is lighter, outside of gaming, for the most part, I gave the experience of the OnePlus better, and also I really like the rounded sides of the OnePlus better. I think that's more comfortable than the flat sides. Okay, so we're getting to the end of the video. I know this is a long one, but I wanted to give all of my opinions up front. I'm going to talk about some photo-related things, and this is not an in-depth camera comparison, guys. So please, if you want to see side-by-side photos, look on YouTube. There's a lot of people who have done very in-depth photo analysis, okay? But what I want to talk about is just some very specific observations that I had from the photos. Now, this is my cat, Paulina, and I took a picture here with my Galaxy S23 Ultra, and what you can see here is that on the S23 Ultra, that it's a pretty good picture. I thought it captured, her fur really well. I think the color was relatively accurate. Detail is pretty good. It's not perfect, but if we go through here, the thing I want to mention is that this is a really important thing I haven't seen a lot of people talk about. Shutter lag on the Galaxy devices. I've seen people claim that the shutter lag is fixed on the S25 Ultra, and it is absolutely not fixed, guys. Shutter lag is a real thing. There was someone else that did a review on YouTube of the cameras, and they confirmed that the shutter lag still exists. Now, is the S25 Ultra better than the S23 Ultra? This photo was, I believe, taken in full transparency on the S23 Ultra, but I had the same experience with the S25 Ultra. I just didn't have a lot of good examples to show. Just taking a ton of pictures with either device, I noticed the same problem. I was consistently getting blurry pictures if my cat was moving, if my daughter was moving, for example, consistently blurry pictures. I just wanted to show, like, this is a problem you're going to see, this kind of a picture on Galaxy devices whenever you're taking moving images. I can pretty much guarantee that unless it's very light movement, you're going to always have that problem. And I also want to note that this picture, this kind of picture, this blurry picture that I was getting on both devices, I noticed this even when I added the camera assistant from GoodLock. So I have the quick action set up to like more quickly capture photos. I have that enabled. I removed optimization to make it capture the picture as fast as possible, and I still cannot fix shutter lag on Samsung devices. Guys, it's a really big issue, and I think Samsung should put more effort into trying to fix that problem. So just know that if you're trying to capture moving objects, you're going to run into this issue for sure. If mostly you're taking pictures of static environments, things that are still, and especially in well-lit environments, then the Galaxy devices do work really well. But there's a couple other things I wanted to show. Now, this picture I took with the S25 Ultra. This is subjective, super subjective, and it's actually really hard for me to kind of, show this properly. But what I noticed in this picture is in the actual fur, if I zoom in here, once I start getting really close, you'll notice like some noise here, but more specifically, there were some photos where it just really over sharpened the image. It's very hard for me to find like a good example of this. I have another one here where just depending on the screen that you're looking at it on, it really over sharpened her fur like a lot in certain areas. And also I noticed that the color was just a little bit like brighter, so it wasn't. Whereas I would say that like the OnePlus devices makes the image, or at least of my cats, it was making the image a little bit darker than real life. It was making my cats lighter than real life on the Galaxy S25 Ultra, actually more than the S23 Ultra. So if we like kind of compare this here, you can see the color, but then you can see here, this is actually more realistic to her fur, and the lighting similar. The lighting situation is pretty similar, so shouldn't be as big of a difference. Maybe a little bit difference in lighting, but again, I tried different lighting scenarios, guys. This is just an observation. There are known bugs and issues with the S25 Ultra right now with the camera. So for me, that's just something to really be aware of. Now, this is another picture that I took. I believe this one was taken with the S25 Ultra, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, I can't remember which one. This one might have been the S23 Ultra, but I just wanted to show like you can get some good pictures on both of these devices in the right scenario if they're not moving. But and then this is, I think, also one that I took with, this is one I took with the S25 Ultra. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. I put these kind of in no particular order here with the right lighting, move to a different room. You can get decent colors. There is some blurring that's happening in the background, but this is another thing that I wanted to mention that I exclusively noticed on the Samsung devices, and more specifically, more commonly occurring with the S25 Ultra. Depending on the scenario, if you have just the regular photo mode enabled and you're not doing like a portrait shot, there's a bug that apparently is also known in low lighting situations where the background blurs automatically when you're not intending it to. So that's just something to be aware of, that like there was some background blurring happening when it's focusing on the object, which I don't know, that could probably happen on any device, but I just noticed more unintended blurring happening on the Galaxy S25 Ultra than on my S23 Ultra or on the OnePlus 13. But guys, here's what I wanted to show as the comparison for the OnePlus 13. So this is something that I could not achieve on the Galaxy S23 Ultra or the Galaxy S25 Ultra. I could not achieve anything like this. What you're seeing here is, this is a this is a motion capture here. I don't really know like the correct term. I would say this is more of like an action shot, I guess, is maybe the best way to identify it. And what I mean is, I took a bunch of rapid pictures of, my cat here, and she was yawning, right? So if I did this with the Galaxy devices, S25 Ultra or the S23 Ultra, there is no way it would not come out blurry. And I got multiple pictures here of her yawning, and like, look how good that looks. Here you can see her tongue out. So I got some really good, and then also just looking at her fur, the tone, I still feel like was overall better, even though sometimes in the certain conditions was maybe a bit darker. This was the prettiest image for me to see. I really just liked the way the images came out. Again, this is consistent with other people have been saying about the camera, which is that if you want a shot that looks like social media ready, OnePlus 13 is the way to go. The only time I would ever recommend any of the Samsung cameras over OnePlus is if you're going for video. The other thing, though, that I would comment on the OnePlus 13 is the front-facing camera is definitely not as good as the front-facing experience camera on the Galaxy devices. Basically, I found that the resolution of images and the detail capture from the front-facing camera on the OnePlus 13 was not as good as on the Galaxy devices. So if I want to take a lot of selfies, for example, I would go with the Galaxy devices. I don't personally do that. I usually use the back camera on my device, which is why I almost always prefer the pictures that I was snapping with the OnePlus 13 versus the Galaxy devices. So guys, that is everything I wanted to kind of cover here, and sorry for the disorganized presentation there on the pictures. But again, that's not meant to be like a side-by-side comparison. It's more of an observation of the things that each camera does well or doesn't. The blur thing is something that is a major issue again on Galaxy devices, and we've known this for many years on the shutter lag, which I would really like to see them improve it. But these are all the things that were influencers for which device I would actually go with. Now, the final thing I'll say before I end this video here is if I was to be asked, do I want to upgrade to one of these devices? So, as you know, I returned the OnePlus 13 specifically because of the bugs and issues I had. I'm currently using the S25 Ultra, and I quite honestly haven't definitively decided if I'm going to keep it, but do I think at my current point that I'm going to keep the S25 Ultra with what I know? Probably not. This is consistent with I've seen other people say. A lot of people have said if you have an S24 Ultra or S23 Ultra, there's not really good reason to upgrade. And for me, the fact that there are known bugs with the S25 Ultra, I haven't replicated the banding issue in night mode where you get like kind of streaks taking night pictures, but I've definitely seen bugs with over sharpening. I've seen camera bugs with blurring that's not intended. And just generally the pictures that I get with the S25 Ultra, sometimes they're a little bit sharper on the S25 Ultra than the S23 Ultra, obviously. Sometimes the shutter speed is a little bit better, so I'm less likely to get a blur, very slightly less likely to get a blur on the S25 Ultra versus the S23 Ultra. But if I could just take the camera of the OnePlus 13, I would prefer it. And the only thing I prefer on the Samsung devices, again, the video capability. So take it for what it's worth. That's my experience. But you've heard all the other things that kind of influence me. And again, I'm at this point very much considering returning the S25 Ultra because the screen, even though, it has better anti-glare, that's not enough of a benefit for me on a day-to-day basis to make me want to keep the device. The AI features are not things that I really find a lot of value in to make me want to keep it. And plus, most of the AI features I use are already ported over to the S23 Ultra and the S24 Ultra. There's some other software things that you'll get, like we haven't gotten one UI 7.0 on the S23 device yet in my case, but that doesn't really matter to me that much. So just taking all these things into account, there's barely anything on the S25 Ultra that appeals to me other than the subtle increase in performance. I can obviously say that the S25 Ultra, it is faster than the S23 Ultra, but it's not as big of a performance increase or change than I would have expected, to be honest. And the OnePlus 13, if I'm comparing the two, was much faster and smoother anyway. So if it wasn't for those bugs, I would have probably more considered that device and keeping it over the S25 Ultra. But these are all the things that I would really think about and consider. Do any of these things matter to you when you're considering upgrading to one of these devices? So guys, at this point, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. if any of this was helpful, if you've heard all of these things, or any of these things, or none of these things from others yet, depending on how much you've been researching. But definitely want to hear from you guys, your thoughts, and I hope this video is helpful as you're kind of deciding between devices. Should you upgrade? Which device should you go with? That's it for this video, guys. Thanks so much for watching and sticking with me through this very long video. I will catch you in the next video.